the other term for sloth?
For sloth.
It was funny. I was actually just looking at some of this stuff the other day, just giving myself a little bit of a refresher on the idea of sloth. And so basically, it's not one and the same as just sitting around and being lazy. It's more like the the inability to do what you're supposed to do. And even on the most basic level, what you're supposed to do is to lovingly engage with the world. And so the basis of sloth is lacking loving engagement. And this really ties into what we're talking about because that's sort of part of my point and something I write more about elsewhere. But the the whole basis for whether it's meditation or prayer or anything else, but especially those two, it gets obvious. The whole basis for the practice of meditation is not this like gritty discipline of forced um, stationariness. The basis for true meditation is abounding love, being loving, being extremely interested and fascinated is the way to be focused in meditation. If you have a loving, calm, fulfilled consciousness, it can apply itself. It can open up to anything and stay on that thing. Uh, Whereas when you have a disrupted, anxious consciousness, you can't ever focus on a thing because there's always something else that you need to get. It's a satisfied, fulfilled consciousness that is steady. So this idea of acedia or sloth is uh, so there's the seven, right? Yeah, the seven deadly sins, and the other six are different kinds of misapplied love. So like wrath is like I really love justice and I love, myself or whoever I'm protecting, and I love the idea of this other person not doing what they were doing before. And because you love those things so much, you end up sinning against them because um, you've misapplied your love. Your love hasn't considered them in the appropriate way. Um, or envy. You love what someone else has, so much so that you're motivated to take it from them and hate them for having it. But nevertheless, it's motivated by love for something of God's creation, which in its basis is appropriate. So all the other sins are misapplications of love, and in some cases having too much love that oversteps certain bounds. But sloth is the one that is not about a misapplication of love. It's actually a defect in love. It's about not having enough love because it means basically it's that state of looking at life as a curse. Even if you're not actually sitting there thinking, oh, life is such a curse, when you sit there and you're like, I guess I could eat some Pop-Tarts, but then I'd have to get up. Maybe I'll It's like you're living in a world of infinite purpose and love and light and crazy mystical experience all the time, and yet you're bored. Like that, there's something wrong with that. And that's the sloth side, is that there's part of you is disconnected and living improperly, unfaithfully, unlovingly in the world. So this really ties in with that. And part of the solution is, well, the love that you need is actually there. It's a given. It's necessary. It's all surrounding. It's all saturating. So you don't have to create it yourself. That's the good news. The bad news is you have to abandon the self that you think you are that is defective in love, which isn't actually bad news in the end, but it's not pleasant when you are sitting in it because that slothful part of you has to die. So sort of comes full circle with what we were saying. And I'll read this poem that I included there that was moving for me, and I thought captured this whole idea very well. It's by Rabindranath Tagore. I slept and dreamt that life was a joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was a joy.
Yeah. It's like what comes to mind with that is the necessity to embody, right? Where if you want to experience, from what I'm interpreting from this poem is, if you want to experience joy, if you want to experience that joy, the the material expression of that is service. And so by acting in service, you are then experiencing joy. But in order to experience that, you have to embody servitude. And I think that's what a lot, from getting the results that you're looking for, or whatever the case may be, it's not a sense of somebody coming up to you and saying, "Hey, this is what you are," and then, "Oh, that's right, that's what I am." It's an active embodiment. It's like, when you are, for a lack of a better term, if you are self-actualizing and you have this image of this version of yourself that you see, uh, and you want to get there, well, in order to properly embody that, you have to do those things that version of you does now. And it has to be now because it's all there is, right? And so you have to let those things fall off that are no longer serving you, and you have to start acting in the ways that would be that are that version of yourself. Or if you want to experience joy, if that is an emotion or a state of being, of existence that you want to embody, yes, I mean, technically you could just embody it, right? But as things are, there has to be almost a material expression or action then that produces that, almost, right? Like you could, okay, you could just sit on the couch and get to a point of bliss and pure joy. That happens. But that act of embodying, that act of service, that act of, if I want to be uh somebody that is jacked and going to the gym every day, if I want to be that, you have to start going to the gym every day. You have to at least get into the parking lot, if you're not going to go in. But doing those acts of embodiment. And so that takes, like we're saying, like you were referring to Deutsch here, that takes the fact that the problems are inevitable, right? You have to act, you have to engage in life. And an act of engagement is embodiment. And so I think the beauty of the story of Jesus Christ is he provides that example of that, he provides that North Star. You see those actions, you read the words, that then becomes a part of you, you know, and then you have to act it out. You have to then start embodying those things. And, again, without that North Star of Jesus Christ, that embodiment of Christ, of God in human form, we don't have that ability to really see that. There isn't that conceptualization. We can't, it's just not as intimate, and I think that word is really key. I feel is intimacy. That's an aspect of love, right? But then that involves you to be engaged. You have to, it's almost like you're a part, not saying, you're like in the world, not a part of it, but you have to be intimate with the thing. There has to be that connectivity. And so that cessation of connectivity, that feeling of repulsion from the world, that feeling of, I don't belong here. It was a mistake that I was even
Right.
here. That, that is, I mean, it's hard to put into words, but it just seems like that is the anti-embodiment. That is
Yep.
like saying, I'm not even going to play the game. I forfeit the role. I'm done. And tying that in with sloth, and what was the other term? What was it?
Acedia
Acedia.
or acedia, something like that.
You know, it almost seems like Acedia or Acedia is worse in a sense, right? Because I think that sloth, you can almost apply a sense of ignorance with sloth, with being slothful,
The
right?
way
But
we interpret it, yeah.
right, with the way that we interpret it.
Mm.
But the other one is knowing. It's like I know what I'm supposed to do, but I just can't, I'm just not doing it. And that compounds over time. I mean, there's been, well, I mean, I remember a day, where I wasn't connected with God, and I was in the world, or I was of the world, and I was just doing all sorts of dumb stuff, as most people do in their 20s. They got to touch the stove to see if it's hot.
Yeah.
But then it comes to a point to where, you do connect with the Lord, and you do have that firm tether, and you're going to put your hand on the stovetop, and God's like, hey, that's hot. How many times we got to go through this? And you're just like, boom. But that one hurts the most because there's no grace. It's like, we alluded to this earlier on in the discussion, and I'll pass it over, but that paternal love of God. Then when you look at that, then we are the child. And so when a child, goes out into the middle of the road or does something, you typically don't scold him. You bring him back. You bring him back, because you have to allot for that level of ignorance. But the more and more that kid knows exactly what they're doing, the less tolerant you're going to be of that kind of behavior.
Mhm.